Hey, wow, that's a great way to start. Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome to Bloodstained, where we talk about all things menstruation and more. I am Ash. My pronouns are they, them. I'm genderqueer, biracial, and gay. I'm on day 15 of my cycle. I am also 2 years and 11 months sober. So I'm almost to 3 years, and that's pretty special. On my cycle, though, I'm feeling pretty energized and more creative. My thoughts are like moving. My blood is flowing, but not down there. Like, it's picking back up. It has been insane. You're going to get two stories in this episode because let me tell you what happened. I This summer has just been nuts. Like, I had in June I had COVID, and that just pretty much wiped out my entire June because I was just really, even when I got better, I just wanted to keep distance. So a lot of inner work has been going on with me. I've been pretty dormant as far as this podcast is concerned. And then in July, the beginning of this month, I got bit by a dog. And let me freaking tell you, like, medicine gets recalled all the time because it's not made for bleeders. Same with, like, vaccines, diets, and workout classes have all been studied on non-bleeders. And like when I got bit by the dog, basically the dog like the dog bit me from behind, which I took as a compliment, by the way. Um, and the owner kind of walked away quickly, so I didn't get to know the status of the vaccinations. So I had to go to the hospital, and it was insane. I had so much anxiety going to the hospital, and I had to get like antibiotics and shots. And I was on these antibiotics, and then I started bleeding, and it was just so intense, so much intense stuff going on. Like my stomach was all gurgly, and I was bleeding, which I'm usually pretty bloated and stuff. And so it was just so uncomfortable. I wanted to move so badly because usually when I'm on my period, I like to stretch a lot and help the blood move. But because I also felt gurgly because of the antibiotics, I was just, and by gurgly, I mean like oozy and yucky and not quite nauseous, but not quite poopy either. It was just, I felt like I was sharding, but like internally. And I know that sounds like so fucking weird, but it was just bubble guts basically. And so I didn't want to stretch. I didn't want to move. That made my cramps worse, and it was just a really intense period. And I'm glad like I stopped antibiotics when about the same time that I stopped bleeding, and so all of a sudden like all these sensations were over. So you could imagine like the relief that I've felt since. Um, it's been interesting because now in this follicular phase, I'm finally getting the benefits, whereas last month's follicular phase was nothing because my body was so stressed out that I pretty much didn't have the benefits of my follicular and ovulation phase because my body was just stressed, wiped out, and I pretty much went from getting COVID to going into my luteal and bleeding phase. So I was just so wiped out, tired. The antibiotics also made me really sensitive to heat, which is weird because I'm like made for the sun. I love the sun. I don't usually get sunburned, and I work outside primarily, and so I started getting symptoms of heat illness, and it felt like my skin was burning, and I was like, is this what a sunburn feels like? And it was just nuts because that was also when I was on my period. So I had my period going on, I had antibiotics giving me bubble guts, and then I had heat exhaustion that felt like I was like burning my skin. But it wasn't a sunburn. Like I didn't get sunburn, and it was just my hands because that's usually what's exposed at work. So it was just so overstimulating as far as my body. And I've really been learning to like be in my body, then not be in my body, and kind of titrating like having a body. And having a body is so freaking weird. Like it's weird being a queer person and having a body. It's weird like being a bleeder and having a body, and it's just weird to like have a body. Like I think about that a lot, especially like before I was recovered. I always was like, we exist, what the fuck? And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, and especially when you're in like active substance use, it's really easy to slip into thoughts like that. But yeah, grateful, recovered, ex-substance user, and I am definitely going to celebrate next month, and I'm definitely trying to include the stories that I have of bleeding in sobriety for the first time. And I can't wait to tell you that. But we have a great episode today because we're talking about the follicular phase while I'm in the follicular phase, and I didn't even mean for that to happen because I just was like, I just need to get the episodes out. I just need to get the episodes out. It doesn't matter when. And finally, I have the time and the space and the energy, and it aligned perfectly to be during my follicular phase. So I'm on day 15 of my cycle. I should be ovulating really soon, but I can tell my body's not ovulating. And the reason I know my body isn't ovulating is because for me, I have specific things. My discharge looks a certain way. My body feels a certain way. But I definitely feel a big come up, and we'll kind of get into why and what that means. I'm just very freaking silly, which is great because I feel like in my previous episodes I've been very cut and dry, but that's just me on my cycle. It's kind of like that book, like This Is Your Brain on Music. This whole podcast is Ash's brain on the menstrual cycle. Like of all the drugs that I've done, the menstrual cycle is the best. Highly 10 out of 10 would do again. And we'll hopefully be doing again for many more years. But I am very blessed, honestly, to enjoy my menstrual cycle and get to share it with you and hold space, especially for those who don't. And I'm gonna definitely include those perspectives because it is hard, and I do not shame people at all for hating their cycle, for feeling dysphoric, for feeling the pain. I totally get that, and I was like that previous to recovery and like finding my own way to enjoy it, but like I embrace those perspectives as well. I think the reason that I'm doing this though is because I come from that like place of liking my cycle, and I hope that like, you know, I hope that like I can reach that broad audience of people, whether they have like a love-hate relationship. It's like still a relationship, and it's still good to talk about. And I'm just lucky enough to be able to hold space for that. I keep going off. I need to talk about the follicular phase. Let me freaking tell you. I'm going to pull up my notes. Also, by the way, if you are watching me on YouTube, you're going to notice that I got, well, a lot of new stuff. Basically, like, I got these new glasses. And if you looked in previous videos, you will freaking see that I have hella glare on those glasses because they got them at Walmart. So I'm really excited about this. It makes me feel less dorky. Yeah. So here we go. Um, the follicular phase. The follicular phase, if you are on your cycle and you bleed near the new moon, the follicular phase would be the waxing moon of your cycle. And I really like using the moon because I think it's a little more accessible, especially for people who don't like period terminology. So using the moon phases is really cool, saying oh, I'm in my new moon phase. Oh, I'm in my waxing moon phase. Oh, I'm in my full moon phase, which is my favorite because that's my ovulation time. But it's dependent on your cycle. If you bleed on the full moon, then your follicular phase would be on the waning moon phase. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, reach out. I will try to make that make sense. But for me, as a new moon bleeder, my follicular phase is usually during the waxing moon. So the moon is getting bigger for the week. And actually, I have been noticing that my period, sorry, I burped, has been getting longer. I think it's mostly due to the stress of this summer that I just told you about. But I also think it's another reason. And it could also not be. We'll find out together. But I've been having 35-day cycles. Usually I have 28-day cycles that align with the moons perfectly. And now I'm in this place where the moon is waning and I'm about to ovulate, instead of ovulating right on the full moon. And I think that when we get older, our bodies tend to shift from a new moon cycle to a full moon cycle. And a lot of people will characterize that by different things. And it's this very gendered term that I don't like, so I prefer to use the moon. But basically, I'm going to tell you what it is in the really gendered way, because that's where you'll find this information, unfortunately. But I'm going to also deliver it with the moon language. The language of the moon. So there's a maiden cycle and a matron cycle. The maiden cycle is when you bleed on the new moon, and this is younger maidens, right? And you are creating life around you. You are learning, taking in information, working on yourself, going to things like going to school, getting your first few jobs, getting information, being supported by someone older than you. And then later in life, probably after your Saturn's return, I don't know, you will switch to a full moon cycle, and they call this the matron cycle, which is the mother cycle, where you have already filled yourself up, you know who you are, you've learned all the information, and now you are nurturing others. And the way that I prefer to say that, because I learned that information that way with those words, and I hated those words because that's not my experience and that doesn't represent me, and I'm sure as fuck it doesn't represent anybody in the LGBTQ community or even women today. Those terms just sound so old-fashioned, to say the least. So I I prefer the new moon would be, if you bleed on the new moon, you're in that space of preparing, planning, retaining information, learning, and kind of building yourself. And then your full moon cycle is you already have yourself established, you've done your Saturn's return basically, and you are nurturing others, whether it's children, a business, a job, your relationship, your home, whatever it is you're tending to, your garden, your farm, your animals. It's kind of I'm filled up and I have overflow now. Whereas like the moon cycle is like I'm filling myself up. The new moon cycle is like I'm filling myself up. I'm waning. I'm waxing. I'm making them, getting brighter and brighter as I go. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But so back to the follicular phase. So we're in the waxing moon at this stage, and the energy of this phase would be like spring. If we're like relating it to seasons, this phase is spring. Things are blooming, things are flowering, people are like getting together. The superpowers of this phase are that you can retain information better. So it's a good time to like learn something, do a class, whatever. You'll be super creative. I know I've been feeling super creative lately, working on the pod, working on writing, working on my music. Planning is better, so organization, and like just prepare a trip, go on a trip, like, make some space. And your immunity gets higher. However, I will say this piece of information was pretty cool. I wish I knew more about it. But all I know, like, is this little blurb that I was reading. When you get sick during this time, in the follicular phase, your period will come soon after. And that wasn't really true for me when I got sick in the, like, last month. But I think I think I was just so stressed that it prolonged my period. But a lot of people will have their period closely after they get sick. And I hear it all the time. People, like, not this time, but I've had that experience when I had a cold, and like I would like suddenly be like sick and on my period, and it'd be like, what the fuck. The other thing is that autoimmune diseases are higher and more common in bleeders because your immunity is like overactive in the follicular phase, and then when you go to the next phases, your immune system stays overactive and then causes a problem for your body. And the pill mutes the signals that you are in your follicular phase, but you still have a follicular phase. And any phase, really. But you might just not experience the benefits as intensely. And also, if you have stress or you're taking any other medications that interact with your hormones, it might change the way you experience these benefits or not. And then your cervix position. So your cervix position during this time, it's like higher in your uterus. It's firmer. I don't know if that's a word. Firmer. And it's closed. So like the little hole in your cervix that opens up, it's more closed. I've heard people say it's kind of like touching a nose. I have never touched it, or I don't think I have touched it. I might have, and just not really known what I was feeling. The brain function during this time is, and your like mental health. So basically what's happening at this time is estrogen is rising, and estrogen influences serotonin to rise. So you'll feel more relief from the big sad, basically. And your brain will be functioning to retain information and planning, which is pretty, like, which is like a symptom of like having more serotonin. However, if you have depression or you have chronic stress, it can suppress the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is where the brain tells the body to release estrogen. And so that's why, like, in my like last month, I didn't feel the positives of the follicular phase because my body was so stressed. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty freaking sad that I got COVID and couldn't go out for Pride Month. I was pretty darn down. And that's probably one of the reasons, because it suppresses the hypothalamus. The body wants to survive. And so some of the functions, like the hypothalamus, will be suppressed. And I could be making that up because I didn't write that down, but I remember reading it somewhere. but you can correct me. Anyway, so let's talk about vaginal discharge. Also, that is the way my stomach felt when I was on the antibiotics. The vaginal discharge in your follicular phase, I don't know why I got so quiet when I said that. It's yellowish to cloudy. Mine's usually like clearish to cloudy, but anyway, there's a spectrum. There's a spectrum of vaginal discharge, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful rainbow of vaginal discharge, which would be a really weird visual. It can be sticky, but it will get wetter and slipperier. That's going to be my new favorite word, as days go on. And during this phase, your sexual desire starts to heighten with the rise of this thing called luteinizing hormone, LH. So any type of masturbation is welcome here. And yeah, I don't know. After the period phase, it can be a while before your vaginal discharge starts flowing, but usually your estrogen starts rising like towards the end of your period, so it's a good time. Supportive foods for this phase, so you want to eat some good leafy greens, some sprouts. I always recommend sprouts. I love sprouts. I like sprinkling them on everything. And healthy fats like avocados and nuts. Kimchi and sauerkraut for your belly, which I have definitely been trying to consume a lot of. I like sauerkraut. Fermented foods and citrus foods. The supportive exercises for this phase, I feel like I'm going to burp again. Okay, no, I'm good. Okay, are working on your form, and then because your brain is trying to retain new information and perfect things. And then also working on exercises that you haven't tried yet. So take a new class, or I don't know, try a sport or something. I have no idea. I wouldn't do that personally, but I would try kickball, I think. Yeah. Maybe I'll try that. I only have a few more days of follicular, so I don't think that's reasonable. But the mind is super helpful in learning new information, so that's a plus when you're doing exercises. Spotting during this phase. If you're spotting during this phase, it's often and I don't mean spotting right after you're bleeding. I mean you're completely done with bleeding, and then you start spotting. It can be considered abnormal if you have other symptoms alongside it. I have new information in the resource guide about spotting and about different period colors with different symptoms. So it'll share different things, because what you don't want to do is think that spot and then Google it and think that something's up that isn't, because there are other symptoms that go along with spotting, whether you're cramping, whether there's pain, whether it's a certain color but orange or bright pink or brown, and those all mean different things. Go check out that if you want information, but I'm gonna have a new episode that is only gonna be about colors, spotting, and smells. It's going to be a very sensory episode. I think that's what I'm going to call it. It's the senses of the menstruation cycle. The colors, the smells, the sounds. Probably not the sounds. I don't know how one would record that, but I think it would just be a lot of folly art, like things that I love. But anyway, so that's coming up, but generally, spotting in this phase, it's well away from your period. You're almost to you're like in between the bleeding phase and ovulation phase, then it'd be considered abnormal. If you had just like come off your period and you notice you're spotting a little bit, it's probably still part of your period. Or if you're like pretty much almost ovulating, like you think you're ovulating, it's probably this weird thing called middle schmerz. I will talk about that in the next thing. There is an ovulation spotting that some people experience called middle schmerz. And that information is in the resource guide, but I will have a whole episode on it, so stay tuned then. But that was all the information that I have on the follicular phase. I hope you took something away from it, or just enjoyed like listening to my my random rants throughout it. But we're done with that segment. We're gonna move on to another segment. Hold on. And for people who are watching the video, you get to see this exclusive content of me turning my like recording shit on. So profesh. Okay. Okay, so the next segment that we have is my period story. Before I talk about my period story, let me take a deep breath because I am all hopped up on my follicular phase. So I need to take a deep breath. I don't know if you can hear that like gong as well as the other one though. That's actually my water bottle. Hold on, let me do like this. That sounds kind of like a doorbell. That was like a hang drum that I tried to like make ring out. I also have these chimes that I want to incorporate, but listen to them. They're kind of really dissonant. It's not as like soothing and relaxing. Anyway, again, tangents. We're talking about my period story. My period story today is not really a period story about like my cycle. It's about the first time that I heard about someone being in love with their cycle and being like interested in menstruation the way that I am now interested in it. So it was like maybe like 2016, 2017. I was living in Utah at the time, and I had started dancing. I do this thing called ecstatic dance. It's kind of like a improv dance. Like a lot of times there's DJs, a lot of like, you know, hippies, wooks, dub steppers. I don't think that's the technical term, but and dancers, and like we would share at the end, and a lot of times like people would share about other like events and stuff coming up. And one time this woman who is amazing, like she started sharing about her journey into learning about menstruation, and she wanted to share it with everybody. And then like now she's a menstrual coach and she does really awesome work. I'm not gonna drop her name right now, but like I'm just gonna say she does really awesome work. And like but at the time she was like just like really getting into it, and like started mentioning these women's circles. And at the time I knew that I was queer, but I was also really closeted in relationships with men that I felt like if I shared my queerness that they wouldn't be attracted to that anymore. And I was also using and really struggling with my mental health, and was still trying to figure out what concoction was going to fix my brain. So I was in a really weird place then, and I just wanted any sense of community. And so I was interested in the women's circle, and I went to the women's circle. So in the women's circle, we get really intimate really quickly, and we go around and we share, and a lot of it was like really deep and personal stuff, and there was a lot of emotions and being there for each other and comforting each other. And then there was like some fun stuff like cacao and learning about yoni eggs and crystal dildos and stuff, and it was cool. But it was, well, let me say this. I was in these spaces that were really, it was really beautiful. Lots of beautiful people were there, and the woman who was really into menstruation was teaching us about it, and she was sharing that, like, about how cacao helps menstruation, and that's why we crave chocolate, because we have intuitive cravings of what our body needs, but we are so used to eating the wrong kinds of food that we think we're craving like Hershey's chocolate, or like you know like heavy fatty meats, but really we want like cacao or like omega-3s and iron and stuff like that. And she was sharing how cacao helps with blood circulation, helps with energy levels, and like helps with cramps and stuff. And so she like shared these little cacao treats with us, and they, talked about how yoni steaming is like really helpful and the benefits of that, and they were selling yoni eggs and stuff. And so I did buy a yoni egg, and I'm gonna have a product review about that. It's not gonna be like what the fuck is her name, Gwen Goop or whatever the shit. It's okay, is all I'm gonna say. It's okay. We're not gonna go into it right now, but I was in this circle, and I went to a couple. Women's circles, and like it would be intimate. Sometimes there would be like a clothing swap and whatever, and it'd be like fun and light. But when we were getting really intimate with each other, it was weird that afterwards, I didn't keep any friendships. And I didn't go away feeling like I made a friend, even though I shared really dark, not dark, but like, like secrets that I only wanted to share with fellow, like, non-cis men. Like, and, at the time, like, I was pretty exclusively with my boyfriend at the time, and I didn't really get any, like, I don't know, feeling like a safe space to talk about menstruation. And so I wanted to go deep with these women, but I didn't feel like afterwards I had like a connection with somebody, and like I didn't end up texting anybody. No one ever like texted me after, like no one ever hung out with me after, and I don't know really that those women like became best friends either. Yeah, I also like the other thing in those circles is that like it was kind of, I know it was because I was in Utah, that it was just like white femme people in the counterculture of Utah, but like I've also seen it in other places like Hawaii, where they have women's circles, and it's like I don't even see like dykes at these circles, like cis women who are not feminine presenting or just different. Like it's very much the aesthetic of white yoga teachers, and I felt like that was, I don't know, I didn't feel like I was in the right space, and I didn't feel like I had much, other than having a vagina and a vulva, I didn't feel like we had that much in common with all of the women there. And they were really beautiful women, and I really appreciate them for who they are. It's just like, I didn't feel like there was like a lot of community. I felt like it was a specific type of community, which is great for them, awesome, but not for me. And I haven't found a community, like a circle that's for me. And I feel like in the spiritual community, it's pretty across the board. I was actually talking about this with a friend last night who has a big spiritual practice and is a yogi and is queer, and we were talking about how these women in men's circles are so binary and heteronormative, and they'll say things like, we're going to embody the divine feminine or the divine masculine. We're going to embody your inner goddess. We're going to talk about the warrior. We're going to talk about like being a lion or a lioness or like a eagle or like a, I don't know, like a mermaid or I don't know what the fuck. And like, it's always like that, And like they like talk about like their relationships with the opposite gender that they are, and they talk about it in such a duality, in such a binary, and in such a like way that is sometimes pretty darn appropriative of indigenous culture. And I'm just like, yo, like, this is uncomfortable. It's not me, and I don't know if you should be doing that too. Like, and yeah, it made me think, and I haven't been to one really since that time, but I have definitely heard about it from just like interacting with people in spiritual communities, heard about their experiences in these circles and all this stuff, and like what energies they're bringing into these spaces, such as the archetype of the warrior, the feminine goddess, the animal archetypes, etc. And it's just, I don't know. It makes me crave, because I want what they have, because the experiences that they're having are like so profound and beautiful. They're connecting, and some people feel really nurtured by that environment. Like that woman who was talking about menstruation was just like, I mean, she has grown her community and is like, I love my sisters, I love my red tent like circle, and she just seems so in love with her friendships and sisterhood. And I'm like, I crave that, but I'm not a sister, and I'm not about appropriating indigenous cultures either. I'm not saying that she is. It's just that like I have heard experiences from various like circles with that are involved in spiritual ceremony, and it makes me inspired though to like create a circle that provides the benefits of a safe community of friends that can get intimate and deep. And this is what I have kind of come up with as like a fucking idea, as a story, as a circle. So I would like a similar kind of circle, but it's not going to be a woman's circle. It's not going to be a menstrual circle. It's not going to be a man's circle. It's going to be, I haven't thought of the name for this, but basically this is the gist of it. We're going to get like people together, and it's going to be intimate. However, in this space, everyone comes in and like meets someone to be their buddy, so they can integrate what we cultivate in the circle, in the ceremony, and like they can reach out to them afterwards. Because I felt like after these sacred women's circles, so much was shared, and it was so intimate, and so much energy was shared. But then after, because I made no connections, no friendships, it was hard to integrate that into my life. And so in this circle that I'm created, for now, let's just call it the blood-stained circle, even though it's not exclusive to bleeders. Um, let's just call this the moon circle, okay? Because I really like the moon. In this moon circle, we're all gonna get a buddy. We're all gonna exchange information. That way, like a few weeks from that time, we can check in with each other and see how we're integrating after that ceremony. And then in those circles, we're all gonna like bring in our own energy and share representation, and it's gonna be inclusive. And I feel like having, I don't know, part of me like is like, it would be really cool if it was just queer people and just all kinds of queer people, and having just a safe space for that. Because one of the things I was talking about with my friend last night was like not being able to share certain stories with cis het people because it will be received like in confusion or in like I don't know, just like judgment, because it's not other people's experience. And so I think like it would be cool, because when we're sharing about our bodies, when we're sharing about our experiences, when we're sharing about that, it's like we should be able to like speak without needing to explain ourselves or justify ourselves. So I feel like it would be just a queer space with BIPOC and Indigenous people to the front, and like making sure that those communities are not being appropriated. And like one of my thoughts was to bring in queer spirituality and queer animal energy. And what I mean by that is like I've been looking at this awesome TikToker called like Queer is Natural, and like animal energy is very spiritual. Like we talk about like you know, like meditating or watching like birds, or like we use a lot of metaphors, like being like a courageous lion or being like free like a bird or blah blah blah. I think it'd be cool to bring in, because a lot of animals have the experiences of homosexuality, and I'm learning a lot about animals that are queer gendered and gender non-conforming, but or non-binary, or not androgynous, hermaphroditic. They're hermaphrodites. Some of these animals, including like the hyena, who has like the female and male both have penises, and they can both be penetrated and receive, and they have homosexual nature, and they like have character traits that are very similar, regardless of their assigned sex. And like, you know, just to like invite that into the space and be like, we're gonna laugh a lot in this space, like hyenas, and that's gonna be our symbol. Or like the hermaphrodite sea slug, or the discus fish, and we're gonna connect with water and like connect to these water elements and these fish, and just like things like that, just beautiful things like that. Or the bonobo, they're very homosexual, and some men, the men in the male bonobos will want to, they can manipulate their body so their genitalia looks like the female genitalia, and they can like stay in those female circles, and like, you know, just very gender non-conforming attributes. There's even now lions and deer who are queering Like some female deer are getting antlers, and some female lions are getting manes, and also mounting other lions and I don't know, female lions, whatever. Like, I don't know, like the word lioness just makes me think of like, I don't know, like the like chipettes or like bachelorettes. It's like that, like it's like they could easily just be this use the same word, you know. There's lions. They're lions. Anyway, but it's really cool to like bring in those energies and like be strong or be fluid or be like, I don't know, just like aligned with nature and bringing nature into these circles. I feel like when I hear about these animals, it's so affirming that I am a natural being. And like anyone who says otherwise is just not informed. Like, how could you say this is unnatural when there are so many, like over thousands of species that are queer and homosexual and gender nonconforming and blah, 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 blah. So I would invite that into these spaces. And then like queer spirituality, I would bring into the spaces because there are so many, I'm learning about these deities that are also queer in the ways that are gender nonconforming or homosexual. And so for me, I hear a lot about two-spirit people in North America or Turtle Island, and I'm not from North America. My roots are in South America, but I hear so much about it, and I'm just like craving like the knowledge of where my roots come from. And when I went to Hawaii, I learned about the Mahu, who were these deities who came to the island who were non-binary, and they were healers and they were highly revered, and like people who were non-binary were like really highly prioritized because of their deity, the Mahu. And like I was like craving that, so I've been looking into it, and there is not a lot on South American deities, but I did find one because I went back to the Incan times. And in the times of the Incan Empire in Ecuador and Peru, they had this deity that is a jaguar rainbow deity, and they're non-binary and gender fluid. And this deity, it's called like Chinquechue. I don't know the pronunciation because it's in like Quechuan. It's like Chinquechue. Hold on. No, yeah, it's like Chinquechue. I'm probably not pronouncing it well, but because it's not in my language at all. It's in an indigenous language, but it's really cool to like hear. And then the people in that were non-binary and gender fluid in that time have another name because they're not the deity, but they are really highly prioritized because they worship a deity that's non-binary and gender fluid. So when you were non-binary and gender fluid in that culture, like they called on you because most of those people were healers and would help people transition to death. And like that was so affirming to me because I used to work in hospice, and that was like one of my favorite things to do. And I do like energy work now, and I'm like, holy shit, I feel like I'm healing the ancestral trauma from colonization and like getting in touch with those energies that were, you know, that my lineage derived from, which were healers and death doulas, and they were queer and they were, special. And it makes me feel really good. And I would invite all of those into the space from everyone else's culture too. When I was looking for this information, I found so much from like various other cultures, like other deities and gods and attitudes, and like people who are referred to in a different terminology. Because, like, in English we would describe it as non-binary and gender fluid, but every culture has their own word for it, like two-spirit, or the Quechuan word for South America that I am not going to try to pronounce. But, yeah. And I would want to, like, have people, come into that knowing, or we could do a little piece of education about that, because I just think we get so much pushback and opposition from spirituality and religion because of homophobia, that like being in these spaces that can be very spiritual and like affirming, I think would be really healing. And it doesn't have to be totally spiritual, but that's what I would want to like bring in, is making sure you have a buddy to integrate, a little bit of education about queer animals and diversity, and like where certain practices come from, and paying respect to those cultures, and not like, claiming or praying in ways that other cultures that are not our own do. And I would love, because like, again, I said in this in the beginning, like, I'm an AFAB non-binary person who loves my period and all this stuff. I hope that like a trans man can hear this and is thinking, wow, I want to do that. Or if you're a trans man and you're out there and you're already doing it, I would love to know and hear about it so I could boost you. Because I feel like that would be such a beautiful circle and community to be in. To be able to like relate and bleed together and like just discuss. And even if it's not like a menstruation circle, for sure. But I do think a menstruation circle, menstruation circle would be fucking dope. But yeah, I mean, if you know of any, let me know and I will, like, I don't know, support. Ah! But because I only want to share from my heart, which is just like kind of like a neutral, literally non-binary space, non-binary language. I'm not very masculine. I'm not. Sometimes I'm a little bit of both. Sometimes I'm just like. Anyway, that is my story. That's a story. I got very chatty, but I'm just, when I think about these ideas, I just light up. I just light up when I think about these like circles. But yeah, so that's my story for the day. Next week I will have a more bloody story, promise. But yeah, thanks for listening. We're gonna go to the next segment, which you will hear in a moment once I switch. Exclusive content. Okay. So we're on to our period product review. This episode is kind of long, but it's because I'm in my follicular phase and I'm very chatty. Today, we're talking about thinks. I talked a little bit about this on my Instagram, but yeah, we're talking about fucking thinks today. Not everybody, a lot of people know about thinks. It's all over your Facebook ads and stuff like that. I'm going to just try to be non-biased, giving the information. Thinks is a period underwear. Period underwear is hygienic. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's underwear that is absorbent enough to hold your periods. Thinks, specifically, they manufacture it in Sri Lanka. They pride themselves for being ethically sourced. and they cost around $20 to $40. They even have an incontinence brand and a teen brand. They can hold up to 5 tampons, and like on their websites they have these little dropper symbols that like tell you, like, 5 dropper symbols is like 5 tampons of holding, and you can wear them all day. You can wear them for a long time, and yeah, and it's okay. They have some FAQs that I find particularly interesting, because they mention about testing their underwear and that they have approved an approved rating with Okotex saying that they are safe and chemical free. And there is a really interesting study that has been done. I have the link to this all in my resource guide. Jesseon Choi from the Sierra Club did research on her underwear to measure sustainability and the chemicals found in period underwear. And they found a high level of PFAS in Thinx, PFAS. PFAS is a chemical that does not degrade at all, no matter how many times you wash it. And there's PFAS in a lot of things. There's PFAS in your pans, and in some foods, and in packaging. But imagine having PFAS in your underwear while you're bleeding, while your cervix is open. So PFAS can lead to the problems with PFAS is that it can lead to cancer, decreased immune response, infertility, a low vaccination response, lower sperm count, diseases, growths, hormone disturbances, and it's just like bad shit. They tested the Thinx that was for teens, and it even had copper in it. They have not publicly commented about these findings on their website at all. Like, I'm looking at their website, and like it doesn't say anything. And they had a lawsuit in 2021 because of this. So the person who did the study, her name is Jesseon Choi. You can find it on Sierra Club. Mamavation is another website, and they posted about it with links to the stories, and they go into it a little bit more. And if you scroll, they review the other period underwear that they studied, and it goes through and tells you how many parts per measure each period underwear had. So there were certain like levels that were detected in certain underwears that that were different. But Thinx had the most, the teens had the most. Even in their organic cotton underwear, there was high levels of PFAS. So take that as you will. Mamavation overviews the brands that do not have underwear. They said that the Luna pads had the lowest level of Thinx detected. Oh, the organic Hip Hugger Thinx had 3,276 parts per measure and fluorine. They go into the Okotex protection. So I'm going to read from Thinx website what it says about it says on their FAQ, our certifications and safety standards. All Thinx Underwear Incorporated are rigorously tested for harmful chemicals and independently certified through Standard 100 by Okotex, which includes REACH requirements. This Okotex certification means every component from fabric to trim is thoroughly tested and certified for ecological safety. It doesn't mention what is in it. It doesn't say really that it's chemical free. It just kind of implies it by saying that they're rigorously tested for harmful chemicals, but doesn't say what's in it. It all it says is like what are things made of. It has a layered technology built into it for moisture wicking, odor control, and absorbency. And they don't address it. They say, oh, they say they're rigorously tested, but they don't say how. Before they purchase the raw materials, we ensure that those suppliers are Okotex certified. So Okotex, according to Momavation, they talk about what Okotex is in that. And that link to the Momavation post is also in my resource guide if you want to read it. It's a very, very long document, but it explains a lot in plain English. And it's basically false advertising. The certification approves certain chemicals, and we don't know why, including PFAS. They allow a certain amount, right? So it doesn't ban PFAS, and it's just sketchy, basically. But they kind of sell it up to make it look like they do this rigorous testing and that it's all fine. But they don't address how much of stuff is it and what the tests are and what Okotex standards are. So it's very open to interpretation. I think you can kind of guess by my tone what I think about it. Basically thinks gets a few points for being a woman-owned and ethically sourced manufacturer and making period underwear popularized. But this is really sketchy, and I reduce a lot of points for the sketchiness. Because like they have so much advertisement out there. They have so much more advertisement than the other period underwear brands that I'm just like, you can't sell us this and not address the lawsuit and not address the chemicals in it. Like, that's not fair. Teenagers are buying these. And like, period underwear is so accessible for like first-time bleeders, and the fact they have an incontinence brand, like they're like reaching a large scale of people, but they have PFAS in them. And like, you know, if you're one of those people who's like, whatever, there's chemicals in everything, like, you're probably fine, like, there's chemicals in your cell phone, like, there's chemicals in whatever, cool, that's okay. Personally, though, I don't want chemicals near my cooch, especially while I'm bleeding. Everything's really open at that time, if you know what I mean. And I give it like a 2 out of 10. And the couple of points are for the, you know, where it's sourced from and stuff, and making it popular. But that's what I give it. If I had like, I liked that they had the little dropper symbols. That was pretty cute. I wish I could like, I don't know, put that on the screen and be like, these are the, I give it like a 3 out of 10 period drops, or like a 1 out of 5 period droplets, but that's too much work, and I don't feel like fucking doing that, so. Momavation, so if you go on the fucking post, it like, you have to scroll. I mean, you could read the whole document, but you gotta fucking scroll if you just want to find the period underwear that doesn't have chemicals in it, and she has a list there. I don't know who wrote the Momavation stuff, so I don't know if it's a she. But I'm just guessing because they say mama, and I think that's why I put it that way. They're mamas out there. They're mama bears, for sure. They're pissed about this PFAS. They... Oh yeah, I was going to tell you the list. So, The list, you can go read it because you'll probably want to read these names rather than hear me say them. The underwears that don't have PFAS or chemicals in it, and they tested this underwear. Jessian Choi tested this underwear, and yeah, Momovation just has a nice list of them. It's I keep losing my list. Lilova, 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 Isle, Aile, Intimate Portal, Period, it's just called Period, one called Madi Body, and Bam Body. I use Bam Body. It's bamboo and cotton. It's dope. I will do a product review on, I will probably do a product review on all of these eventually. But yeah, Bam Body is the one I use. Check out those other ones. Throw out your PFAS panties and yeah, get some nice chemical-free period underwear and period pads. Some of these are period pads, which is cool. I haven't tried a period pad, and I think I'm going to. So that is the end of my period product review. So as you can tell, I'm not very fond of the things. Sorry, thanks. If you're listening, this ain't for you, buddy. This is what I think. But I will say, if I learn new information and things comes out saying, hey man, we learned and we changed, or this was disproven, then I will make a whole other episode saying, you know what, y'all? I was wrong about the things. They are okay now. And I will correct myself if I learn that. But as it stands, this is the information that I read. So this is the information that I'm talking about. But I'm glad, I will be so glad to be corrected on this if it's like comes out that they find a way to disprove it, or that they took the notes and they changed, or whatever. But yeah, until then, this is my thought. So, I'm always learning, open to new information, blah, blah, blah. Not a professional. This is just like, my recommendation to not use the PFAS panties. I also hate the word panties, but I like that it has a P. I like the PFAS panties. I like the alliteration. So anyway, that is the end of that segment. We're going to move on to an awesome segment, which I like to call the period history. Well, actually, I like to call it menstruation history. I'm working on the names. Okay, don't judge me. Today we're talking about this really cool, nifty thing. It's really not that cool. It's actually the opposite of cool. It's called a sanitary apron. It is exactly what the fuck it sounds like. It is an apron. There's this... Okay, let me describe this apron to you. Basically, it's like a belt that goes around... Ooh, wow, my shorts are like way up. It's this belt that goes around... And then there's like a big flap in the front and then a big flap in the back. And then it holds a little pad in between with like a little hook. The little hook that holds on to this thing. There's this really funny blog from Gabrielle Moss on Bustle. She wore an old-fashioned sanitary belt, and she describes her experience, and it's really funny. I highly suggest you check out that blog. And she talks about how she tried to wear it for her whole bleeding phase, and she was talking about how like it was really hard to wear tight clothes, and it was really hard to hold the pad in place. She said there was a lot of wedgies, a lot of chafing. It did not feel sexy. It was just It's funny. Go check it out. Gabrielle Moss on Bustle. And she like shows pictures of the belt too. It really is just like a latex band with hooks and stuff, and it's wild. But the apron. I'm gonna read one of the advertisements. So one of them is combination apron and belt. Combination sanitary apron and belt made of good quality rubberized material, waterproof and acid proof. I don't know what they're doing with the acid, like that they need to make it acid proof. But top section is made of net, tape belt and waist and safety loops with pins for attaching to undergarments. Tabs with pins attached to napkin are priced 35 cents each. They even had sanitary bloomer shields to like shield from it getting onto your bloomers, which I guess are like an old way of saying pants. It says, made of extra good quality lightweight rubberized cloth, guaranteed acid proof, just in case you're getting into some acid, and waterproof, held around the limbs by adjustable hose supporters and supplied with an adjustable waistband. Rubber stays in crotch and at bottom. Sexy. Fits close to the body and always stays in place, not according to Gabrielle Moss. Designed for comfort and protection. Not bulky. That's like, I'm looking at the picture they use in this advertisements, and it's like this really petite, skinny chick, and it looks pretty bulky. And it says, designed for comfort and protection, not bulky, worn at the same time as a pair of knickerbockers. Sounds super fun, super fashionable, or bloomers. Our price, 75 cents. And you can take it on the road. They have a tourist set, and they give you some prepackaged sanitary like cloths. So you can take it on the go. They're really trying to make this convenient for you, but it is so not. It's this big, huge thing that goes down to your knees, because I guess at that time you were wearing all stuff down to your knees, unlike me right now. I don't think I could wear that with the shorts I'm wearing today. It's wild. It really sounds uncomfortable. And oh yeah, the Gabrielle Moss, she says like the tightness of the belt, because she had to make it tight so the pads would stay in place. She like had like welts on her like hips from the belt, because it's like directly on your skin. Yeah, and just like having the pad like held tight in your crotch like that sounds like a yeast infection waiting to happen. It's not, doesn't sound very fun. But I also understand that at that time, they probably didn't have pads with wings for your underwear yet. This time, I'm getting this information from this really cool website. If you like this kind of stuff, it's the Museum of, what is this called again? Museum of Menstruation and Women's Health, and it shows just like all the good stuff that I'm interested in. So if you're also interested in, check out this website. It's mum.org. It shows a lot of fun stuff like humor, words, and expressions about menstruation, and like just like, I don't know, all these things from menstruation history. I'm definitely gonna look more and give you the goods from this website. I really like it. Yeah, it's cool because it also shows like these old advertisements and the pictures of like how they were modeled and stuff. And in this set, I think it's from like the late 1800s. Yeah, early 20th century. Um, the scans for this were found in a, like the advertisements for this were found in a 1941 Sears Roebuck catalog. Yeah, so they say just try jogging in this. Oh my god. No. Fuck that. That's intense. That's intense. Maybe one day I will try out these old methods and just for the clout. Just for the clout, I will try a fucking belt or rubber pants or whatever. Oh, I don't think I've talked about the rubber pants yet. Stay tuned, because it gets wild. It gets weird. Ooh, you know what else is coming up? Is the first menstrual cup. You won't believe what they made these out of. I have just some really exciting topics. After ovulation, we're off to the races, because we covered the phases, and I just have a lot of other stuff that I want to bring to the light. But I had to just, I didn't have to. I wanted to discuss the, the 4 foundational phases with y'all. And yeah, I'm hyped for the future. I'm hyped for the pod. I'm about to start ovulating, so I'm just gonna get even more hype, and I hope to make a video right at ovulation time, but if I don't, then I'll let you know, because I let you know what phase of my cycle I'm in. I hope y'all have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day. I hope you enjoy and take something away from this, and if you want to write in some perspectives, some suggestions, or want to be on the pod, because after I cover ovulation, I'm going to start inviting guests, and I'm really excited for some of the guests that I already have for you. It's going to be so cool. But write into me. Email me, DM me on Instagram, whatever. It's going to be dope. And I hope that you find a way to enjoy yourself. I hope you find a way to laugh. I hope you find a way to experience bliss and gender euphoria and euphoria in general, because I know the news can get us really fucking bogged down, which is why I think bliss is revolutionary. I love you. I'll say it a bunch of times throughout this pod, but I just want you to know. And have a good rest of your day or night or whenever you're listening to this. To be continued. End of pod. I think you know what? P.S. I'm going to find a really nice and fluid way to end the pod. I don't know what that's going to look like, so for now it's just going to look like this. Bye-bye!